So the end of the quarter coming up. Do you think we may see a turnaround? What are your thoughts?
I think we're about to see a turnaround already. I mean, even today, silver's up a couple bucks, right? But you're right, that short covering has happened. I think the majority of the naked shorts have been unwound. But they had to. You know, you look back, silver was $28 the beginning of January of 25, and then it was 71 the beginning of this year. I mean, that's a lot of growth. And if you're a big bank and you had short positions, you were toast, right? Absolutely toast. So they had to unwind those things. And then there's a forced liquidity moment in ETFs, which caused even more selling pressure on the markets. But what we have to realize is these are short-term, daily, weekly fluctuations, right? Because fundamentally, the markets didn't change at all. There's still very little supply. There's still very high demand. And now we've got the war that continues to go on, right? It's like, okay, this ultimatum didn't end the war in Iran. It's just extended even more. And I have a feeling this is going to continue to go on for a bit because when Iran basically rejected Trump's 15-point plan, they came back with a 5-point plan. 4 of the points, I mean, they don't matter. It's like, okay, you got to stop killing Iranians and this and that, right? But one of them was they want full 100% sovereignty of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, Trump's not going to give them that, right? So this is probably going to have some legs. And then Eric Prince, a month or so ago when this all started, said, if this lingers on, oil's going to be $150 a barrel. Right, so now we're over 100. This is the problem in a world where oil is the #1 commodity on the planet. It's used for everything. As it goes up in price, there's global inflation, right? So how do you slow down global inflation? With global interest rate hikes, right? So this is why JP Morgan, you know, their researchers said, if this goes on for another month, we're truly facing a global recession.
Yeah.
Right, so it's like, why would we face a global recession? Well, because as interest rates go up and we're in a world that's just handcuffed with massive debt, rising interest rates are a problem. Right, so this is, to me, the battle of the bankers, so to speak, right? You look at the banking dynasty of the Rothschilds, for example. They made a lot of their money with oil. The Strait of Hormuz, they need to control, right? And so this is what Trump is after. It's like controlling these resources, which is why he, you know, basically added silver, copper, some other things to the critical minerals list, right? It's controlling the natural resources, which is important, of which oil is a big one, right? So you look at all of this and it's like, okay, maybe it ends quick, maybe it doesn't end quick. But all of this uncertainty brings volatility into the markets. And sure enough, we're seeing volatility, right? So who else is seeing volatility? How about Putin, right? So what did Putin do yesterday? Putin basically said, hey, you know, all this gold that we own and control, we're not going to export it to the rest of the world starting May 1st, right? So it's like, to me, there's this big underlying story that mainstream media is not going to talk about. They're not going to say, so what if Putin's not going to export gold to the rest of the world? What does that matter? Well, to me, here's the story behind the story. And this is a big deal for everybody who's invested in metals and actually cares about where this global economy is headed, right? And you and I have addressed this from different angles so many times over the last couple of years. We're going into a digital world. Whether it's central bank digital currency, whether it's decentralized finance, whether it's a distributed ledger blockchain, there's a changing of the guard happening where we're going from central bank and fiat money to something else, right? So what is Putin actually saying when he says we're not going to export gold to the rest of the world? Well, he's basically saying, without saying it, gold is not just a commodity. It's becoming settlement collateral, right? Which is why Basel III basically made gold a tier 1 asset, right? So start connecting some of these dots, right? So when a country stops letting physical gold leave, what are they doing? They're protecting real money. This is what Putin is doing, right? And he's preparing for a trust breakdown in fiat systems, in my opinion. This is what he's doing. So you see how this is already starting. So since the Nixon administration, what did Nixon do? He closed the gold window to prepare for complete fiat-based money, but he also created a petrodollar during that time, where all oil was settled in US dollars globally. Well, what has been happening is India is buying Russian oil with what? Not US dollars, United Arab Emirates dollars or Chinese yuan. See, it's a changing of the guard. That's a movement away from the petrodollar. This is a changing of the guard. Well, when Russia uses Chinese yuan to import Chinese goods, what does that create? Surplus capital. What are they doing with the surplus capital? They're buying gold with it, right? So now he wants to keep it. So when this final settlement layer of US dollar disappears, he's keeping gold domestic and he's strengthening their system, not a US dollar denominated system. He's strengthening the system that the rest of the world wants, which is a de-dollarized world and possibly something that's backed by something else, right? So let's look at history. Historically, when countries restrict gold movement and they limit currency outflows, what does it signal? Signals they think that there's instability coming. That's what that signals. Why? Because during volatility, capital tries to flee and hard assets get drained. So we've talked about hard assets getting drained a lot. In what? LBMA in London having no inventory of silver. They're depleting their gold reserves. How about COMEX? COMEX has very little silver. I deal with this every single day when we're purchasing a lot of silver for our clients, right? And things like 1,000-ounce bars are not had for months, 9 months maybe, right? Except in every once in a blue moon, we'll find out, oh, there's like 19,000-ounce bars available, right? It's like, okay, this is interesting to me because what do the exchanges deal in? 1,000-ounce bars only. They don't have 100-ounce bars. They don't have 10s. They don't have rounds. They just deal in 1,000-ounce bars. So what do the manufacturers use when they buy silver from the exchanges? 1,000-ounce bars. Well, there's really not much available. So to me, when I see these price fluctuations happening, it's like, okay, these are inter-day, inter-week, inter-month movements. They're temporary because ultimately everything always boils down to supply and demand, right? There's very little supply, there's a lot of demand. So let's say we've heard a lot of stories about how gold is going to be repriced, right? Is it going to be backing a currency? Are they going to arbitrarily set the value to $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 an ounce? Who knows, right? But as trust in the fiat settlement weakens, countries start acquiring and accumulating and keeping physical gold. See, gold isn't just going to rise in this situation. It's ultimately going to get repriced as a monetary asset again. And Russia made it clear. They are seeing this instability moving to a different system, whether it's tangible backed currency, whether it's digital currency. And Russia made it clear gold is staying at home. And this is a structural shift. Putin is actually front running what he thinks is coming. Right? So to me, I look at that story behind the story. It's not just a dumb story that, oh, Putin's going to keep his gold. He's not going to export it. The question should be, why is he doing that? Right? And I think that's the answer as to why is there's a lot of instability that's going to come. This instability of the war, which nobody knows when it's going to end. Nobody knows what's going to happen to the price of oil. But instability always breeds market chaos and volatility. whether it's the stock market, the bond market, gold and silver, and we're seeing that volatility right now. And there was a lot of expectation. I would say I take that back. The story was this conflict was going to end soon. Well, it didn't end today on the 5-day ultimatum. It's going to keep going. And I don't know. I mean, you're a military expert. I am not. Right. So, I mean, you might have a better grasp on, is this going to end tomorrow? Is this going to end a week from now? Or is it going to be Afghanistan? And it doesn't end for decades. Right. But the point is, you might know, I don't know, but all I look at is the day, right? Because today there's instability, because there's volatility, because there's unknowns, and this causes markets to move, right? So a couple weeks ago, I can't remember if we talked about it on this show or not, but it was kind of like the reemergence of that book, The Great Taking, right? Which was done. I know we talked about it over a year ago when this book was written. Well, what's the Great Taking? This is the concept of when you put money into a financial institution, into a bank, you give up ownership of that money. It's not yours. The money you have in a checking and savings account technically isn't yours because you securitize it. You give the bank the authority to do whatever they're going to do with it. This is fractional reserve banking. They're going to loan 90% of it out to other people. They're only going to keep 10% back. And they hope and pray that not everybody wants withdrawals at the same time. Well, when there's instability and everybody wants withdrawals because they don't feel that it's safe in the banks, well, then you have a run on the banks and then the banks could run out of money, right? So what's been interesting is a couple weeks ago, BlackRock had, I think it was somewhere between 6 and 9% of their total $26 billion portfolio in one quarter were redemption requests. And so what did they say? No, we're not giving you your money back. And then they put a cap on it of 5%, which means if you put $100,000 into this fund, you're only getting access to 5,000 of it. Well, then Blue Owl, a fintech company, suspended redemptions altogether. And then one of the world's largest real estate investment trusts tricked everybody into thinking, okay, we're safe. But all they did was inject $400 million into the account to make people think, oh, your money's still safe. And then 2 days ago, Apollo Capital, one of the larger financial, hedge funds on the planet, they suspended redemptions, 1.2 billion pounds worth. I mean, pounds, not pounds of silver or anything like that, but British pounds, like call it $1.2 billion. They said, no, we're going to put a small dinky little cap on your redemptions as well. So isn't this the Great Taking playing itself out? Where financial institutions say, you can't access your money, right? And this is the danger of paper assets. This is why gold and silver are so important and why people should do what Putin is doing and saying, we're keeping it. We're not going to export it. We're holding on to it. Like he's basically hoarding gold, right? Well, a couple months ago, China did the same thing. When Trump basically put silver on the critical minerals list, what did China do the next day? They stopped exporting silver to the rest of the world. And they're an exporting nation. Why would they do that? Because they want to keep it, right? Why? A, because they need it for manufacturing, but B, maybe they see uncertainty and volatility as well. And you need to keep tangible assets during times like this. I mean, this is some of the wildest, most uncertain times that this world has ever seen. And we need to take advantage of that, Michael. I mean, it's like, do what the big boys are doing, do what countries are doing, and start acquiring tangible assets, because you don't know when the shoe is going to drop and banks run out of capital. I mean, as Putin sees it, the world is de-dollarizing. Why? Because most of the world is dumping US dollars like it's yesterday's trash, right? And so as the price of oil goes up, the dollar's been strengthening some, right? Because most countries still do use the dollar for oil settlement. But there's a big movement, especially within the BRICS nations, to de-dollarize and not use the dollar as a petrodollar, but to use their own currency. Right, so this is the world that we're living in right now, and it's uncertain. The only thing that is certain is stuff that's real.
We got the pet, and the reason why pretty much guaranteed of the Middle East that they were, and so that's where we're in a pickle, right? Because we have to and take care of Iran because they were threatening the whole region. And I think there's going to have to be boots on the ground. I've been involved in the Middle East for almost half my life, 30 years, over 30 years, and they don't deal. The only way they know how to deal with others is if someone comes in with more force than they have. So that's where we're at. So Trump, I think, is moving military personnel to that area. 2 different Marine Expeditionary Units are moving that area. 82nd Airborne. Who knows how many other groups? He's trying to talk to different groups in the region to probably get involved. Saudi Arabia has already said they're going to get involved. So, yeah, this is going to be drawn out. It won't be in Afghanistan. It won't be in Iraq because Trump doesn't deal that way. He comes in, he hammers, and it's done. So they've done everything that they can do from the air. So you have to put boots on the ground to finish the job. That's been the way for all of eternity. Dealing with these types of situations. So they can kind of talk about, yeah, we're going to do this, and they're dealing with us, and then Iran says we're not dealing with them. That's bullshit. So who's telling the truth? Somebody. And somebody's going to get, I think, probably hammered because that's the way this always happens. So, again, having been in the Middle East for 30 years, I know that Iran is the head of the snake. So we're cutting the head of the snake off, and we'll probably shut down military bases all around the Middle East after this. They're that, prominent and, fomenting disarray around a whole area. So, who knows what's going to happen today? The stock market's crashing. I look back in time. I look at the 70s and 80s. We had an oil boom, and we had the stock market go into decline for a long period of time. We go to 2008, 2009. Again, oil boomed, and then the stock market declined. And what else happened during those 2 time frames? Silver went to the moon. And now silver is going to go to the moon again because we're going to see, again, probably the highest gas prices ever.
I mean, highest gas prices ever makes JP Morgan's analysis look pretty solid. We will go into a recession. Well, when is the worst time for a sitting administration to go into recession? During midterm elections, right? So when you've got this war, when you've got all this political instability, when you've got inflationary pressures, Trump's request to the Fed is to lower interest rates, but you can't lower interest rates during times of inflation. Oil going up is the most inflationary thing you could have because it's used for everything. So here's where worst possible time to not stimulate the economy is during an election year. And so maybe Iran and China know this, and they're not just playing military battles here. It's more of an economic and political battle. Everything's happening at the same time because who is their worst enemy? It's Trump. What's the best way to inoculate themselves against Trump? How about make him lose control of the House and the Senate so everything goes into a stalemate, right? And so you look at how economics and politics and geopolitics and even the social landscape that we're living in, they're all pointing in kind of a yucky direction. Now, that's just for the right now, right? I ultimately believe we are going to have an amazing outcome from all of this. I just don't think it's going to be a pretty path to get there.
Yeah.
And that's where this volatility and instability comes from.
Yep, absolutely. And the best way to overcome this volatility is have a good portion of your assets in silver and in the chat, people were saying one of the best ways is to have your silver vaulted with Dr. Kirk Elliott. And I completely agree with that. I have a massive amount vaulted with you, and it is the best advice, the best thing that I've ever done in my life as far as protecting my assets and wealth. They've grown tremendously. I know they're going to grow even more. So we've been, back when it was $17, we were jumping up and down. I mean, look at it. Almost went, 10x from that, and I think it will in the future. What are your thoughts as far as where this goes, near term, mid year, and then end of the year?
So I've been saying for months and months and months that I think we hit 150 by this summer.
Yep.
Still think we're going to get to triple digits by June, right? So that hasn't changed. That means I think with everything that's happening with the low supply and the high demand, and now we don't necessarily have the huge anchor that we had with all these outstanding open short positions, right? So a short position always acts as an anchor to future growth because you never know when the banks are going to start to unwind those things, which puts selling pressure on the markets. Well, we've seen that. We've seen that happen. And now that most of them seem to be unwound, there's not much of an anchor holding it from future growth, right? So this is where we could see $200, $300 by the end of the year. So I'm not the only one. So even like Jesse Colombo, I think he's a brilliant researcher with the Bubble report.
Yep.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
So he just showed a graph earlier this week on gold. He showed a graph on silver. If you look at the bubble on X, you can see these things and how you've got these pennant looking formations, which is a kind of like a descending triangle, right? So you've got major growth and then it consolidates, right? And then when it breaks through that little pennant, it breaks to the ceiling again. And then it comes down a little bit, consolidates. That's another pennant. We are at the end of another pennant in both gold and in silver, which means what comes next? Massive growth. So this is where I'm excited. And I know some people have trepidation. They think, Kirk, it's gone down so much since January. It's like, what? Did you advise us incorrectly? It's like, no, because these are temporary movements. You always have to look at supply and demand, and there's no supply, there's high demand. People have a short-term memory though, and they just remember, man, it was 118 on January 30th, right? And now it's in the 70s. But how quickly you forget, it was $28 in 2025. It was in the teens the year before that. And it's like, we've grown a lot. And during that time, you've had major pullbacks. This happens to be one of those pullbacks, but still in an uptrending market. So when you get a pullback in an uptrending market, what does that say? Buying opportunity. And that's truly what we have right now because the fundamentals of the market haven't changed. Now, what would cause some of these fundamentals to change where you'd say, man, maybe silver and gold have peaked out? Well, that would be high supply and low demand. We don't have that. Wars and rumors of wars would cease. We don't have that. You would have global peace and you'd have political stability domestically. Well, we don't have that. Inflation would have to subside. Well, we certainly don't have that, right? So therefore, the fundamentals haven't changed. Oh, how about the need for electronics goes away, or solar power, or nuclear power? None of that is going away, right? This is why we're still in a massive uptrend, and I don't see the demand ever diminishing. In fact, I see the demand continuing to increase for both gold and silver. Silver because it's a manufacturing industrial metal. Gold because of like what Putin said without saying it. I think this is a structural shift in the global economy, starting to move away from paper as we know it to something different. Whether that something different is tangible backed currencies or whether that something different is a digital currency, this is still a paradigm shifting moment. And that is going to bring upheaval. And you know what? People are going to say, well, finally, we're moving into digital currency and these bankers are going to get what they deserve. It's like, don't forget, central bank digital currency is managed by the same people who manage the paper currency. All that they're going to get is more power and control because now they have the ability to flip the switch electronically and say you can't access your money, right? So this is why what I think where Trump is an absolute genius is like with the Genius Act, with the emergence of stable coins, right, which the US dollar is easily 90% of the global stable coin backbone, that creates demand in a decentralized blockchain that wasn't there before. So MasterCard this week spent $1.8 billion on this little known crypto company. That what does this crypto company do? All they did was create the coding and the backbone to change fiat money into digital money.
Wow.
And they spent $1.8 billion on it because that gives them the opportunity on all these different chains, all these different countries, all the different currencies to move fiat into blockchain. And it's like, okay. And they said, you know what? This is also going to ultimately bring to what? The reality that almost everything on earth can be tokenized. Meaning you could ultimately have tokenized gold and silver. You could ultimately have tokenized real estate, which we already have. Every single stock, bond, mutual fund could be tokenized, meaning you can buy it on the blockchain with zero friction, kind of out of the system. See, and just like when you sell a stock or a bond in a IRA or 401k, where does that money go? When you sell it, it goes into a money market fund. That's the holding tank. So when you sell Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or XRP, where is it going to sit? Well, it should sit in a stable coin, basically the version of a money market on the blockchain. See, this is what Trump is seeing moving forward, which is why this Genius Act and why everybody is fighting in Congress on, is crypto and these tokens, is it a security or is it a commodity? And who should regulate it? Should it be the SEC, the CFTC, or no regulation at all? Nobody can figure out what it is, right? So this is where we know that we're at the verge of like where we were in 2000 when the internet became a thing, right? Where we were when, 10 years ago when Bitcoin started. It's like those are massive disrupting agents to how things are. The internet changed the world. Cryptocurrency changed the world. We're about to enter into a changing of the world where I think fiat-based money as we know it is going to be a very disruptive agent because it's going to go away. I truly think a few years from now, we won't be dealing in paper money at all. At all.
Yep. And if you look at the stock market, NASDAQ is in correction mode. It's down over 10%, I think 12% today. And you look at the S&P. The S&P for 1 year is up 14%. After all the pullback that's been happening, it's close to correction territory as well. But you look at silver for over the year, it's up over 100% still with this massive pullback. And it's gonna reach those highs that it did and go past those highs, guys. So it is where the money is going to make a difference. You look back in time, like we talked about, we did the cup and handle. We're past the cup and handle, and we have that was the biggest cup and handle in history for any asset, any time in history, and boom. So it's going to go very high. So you need to have your assets, a good portion of them, I would say, in silver right now. And the best place to do it is with Dr. Kirk Elliott and his team. You can reach his team by going online to kepm.com. And there's contact information there, and definitely get in there and, get your silver. I talked to a gentleman yesterday at an event that I was at, and he put a very massive portion of his, his wealth into Dr. Kirk Elliott's, safe haven, and I call it a safe haven. It's crazy, and he's very happy he did. He did it several years ago, and he's up tremendously. But if you look at the stock market, if he left it in the stock market where it was, he'd be down today. So, and he's up like multiple, multiple levels up. So thank you, Dr. Kirk Elliott, for all you do and all the information that you share with us. It's making a difference in everyone's lives. It will continue because we're in the beginning stages of this bull market in silver and gold.
Yeah, we are. I mean, that story right there, if he got in a few years ago, he got in the 20s.
Yep.
Even after this correction that we've seen the first part of this year, it's still in the 70s. Mm-hmm. That's a tripling.
Yep.
I mean, that's incredible. And imagine what happens moving forward when we hit triple digits, right? I mean, this is where you flee for safety, just like when a hurricane comes in, you go inland, you go to higher ground, right? When a tornado's blasting through town, you go hide in the cellar, right? Things happen, storms of life come, and you just want to make sure you're in safety. I would not think that money in the bank is safe right now when we've got capitalization issues at the banks, when we're going into a potentially global recession where interest rates are going to have to, normally interest rates lower during recessions to stimulate the economy, but this one's a weird one because you've got massive inflationary pressures with oil and everything else and the massive printing of money to try to get us out of this recession. What does that say? This says stagflation, right? A recessing economy with higher prices, that's the worst of all possible scenarios for a policymaker to get out of and flee for safe ground. That's what gold and silver offer.
Absolutely. And going forward, I think that everyone's going to be very happy with investing with Dr. Kirk Elliott, like I am. So it's now there's people that are talking about how high it's going a lot higher, right? Multiples higher. We both believe, and at some point we're going to start to roll it over into gold, which again will go multiples higher again. So the best way to do that, guys, because I know a lot of you guys talk about going to your local coin dealer and so forth. I'm hearing that coin dealers aren't taking a lot of silver right now because they can't move it. So if you get stuck with your silver, that would suck. But with Dr. Kirk Elliott, you can move it very quickly. So and convert it over to gold and have your gold higher, whatever you need. So there's just no problem with that. So that's another reason why you want to have that. It's insured, it's in a safe area. So lots of turmoil in the markets and probably even down to the community level going forward.
Yeah, I mean it's important that you buy bullion. So I'd encourage everybody, if you're going on YouTube, look up Tucker Carlson's expose on the gold scam. Right, because it talks, and he interviewed Dale Whitaker, which was an amazing interview, but they talk about these companies that sell collectible, commemorative, high grade, high premium, high commission garbage that you can't ever get out of. You have to make a market for those things when you sell them.
Yep.
Dale Whitaker exposed the game.
Yep.
And it's a sick game that hurts people forever. They're never going to get that money back, right? So when you're buying bullion, it's as simple as pressing a button because it's a global commodity. You don't have to make a market for it, and it's sold. See, liquidity at the end is equally as important as the price that you pay for it going in, right? Because if you can't get rid of it, well, then what good is it? You have to be able to sell when the time is right. That's why we do bullion. There's low cost, low premium. We charge zero when you liquidate, right? Unlike some of these places that I'm seeing now, it's like, if you can get them to answer the phone, they'll say, oh, well, we're not buying anything back right now. You haven't held it for 3 years yet. It's like, what? Held it for 3 years? Why do you have to hold it for 3 years? Well, it's because they paid so much for it. Sorry, phones are ringing off the hook here. When they pay so much for it, you have to hold it for a long time or else they're exposed. Right. So anyways, I encourage everybody to watch Tucker's documentary. It's scary if you bought from one of those companies, but that's why we deal in bullion only. And thank you, Dale Whitaker, for exposing this